happened to our country? Probably 20 million people. And you know, that's a little bit... He's going down!
On the roof, he's going to...
We're pointing at the guy crawling up the roof.
And he had a gun, right?
He had a rifle.
A rifle.
We could clearly see him with a rifle. I'm standing there pointing at him for, 2-3 minutes. Secret Service is looking at us from the top of the barn. I'm pointing at that roof, just standing there like this. And next thing you know, 5 shots ring out.
So you're certain that the shots came from that guy on the roof?
100%.
Hey friends, my name is Tara Marie, and this is my channel, True Crime Matters. So today I wanted to take some time to talk about a story that is understandably all over the news, and that is the assassination attempt on former President Donald Trump by a 20-year-old man named Thomas Matthew Crooks. Now, this case is still developing by the day as more and more information is debunked, discovered, and clarified. So be forewarned that some of these details may change. But with that said, let's dive into what we know so far about Thomas Matthew Crooks. On July 3rd, 2024, the Trump campaign publicly announced that they would hold a rally in Butler, Pennsylvania on July 13th. For weeks, the town of Butler prepared for this rally. Secret Service officials worked with local law enforcement to prepare for the expected thousands of people to attend the rally in support of former President Trump. On July 6th, just 3 days after the location of the rally was announced, and just 1 week before the rally, a certain individual signed up online to attend the rally. They used an encrypted email address and phone number, but nevertheless used the name of Thomas Matthew Crooks. Thomas was born September 20th, 2003, and raised by his parents, Matthew Bryan and Mary Elizabeth, in Bethel Park, Pennsylvania, which is described as an upper-middle-class neighborhood. His parents both worked as licensed professional counselors, and neighbors described them as good parents and nice people. Thomas attended Bethel Park High School, where he was said to be an above-average student. He graduated with high honors in 2022 and even won a $500 Star Award from the National Math and Science Initiative. Now, both classmates and school officials have described Thomas as being very quiet. Some classmates claimed that Thomas was often bullied in school for various reasons, which included his quiet demeanor and body odor. It was also said that he often wore camouflage hunting outfits and patriotic t-shirts.
Based on the way he dressed, I mean, you know how kids are nowadays. If you don't fit in with the clique, they're gonna come after you. And that's kind of like how he was. Like, he would sit by himself, play games on his computer.
Kohler says Crooks wore an anti-COVID mask long after they were required.
Some students and graduates of Bethel Park High School allege that Thomas actually tried out for the school's rifle team, but failed the tryouts because of poor aim. One former student even went on to say that his aim was dangerously poor at the tryouts. Like, it was actually dangerous to have him on the team. But that said, Bethel Park School District has claimed that they have absolutely no record of Thomas ever trying out for the team. It has also been said that Thomas always enjoyed playing chess and video games, and he was learning how to program computers. In fact, Thomas had earned his associate's degree in engineering science just 2 months ago. He was working as a dietary aide in a local nursing home and was said to be a good worker there. Just this year, Thomas was accepted into both the University of Pittsburgh and Robert Morris University, and he had planned to attend Robert Morris. It has been said that his political views are currently unknown because, again, he was described as a quiet person. So Thomas really didn't share much about his ideology on social media. But with that said, through an investigation, we do know that when he was 17 years old, the same day that President Biden took office, he donated $15 to the Progressive Turnout Project, which is a liberal voter turnout group, through the Democratic Party donation platform ActBlue. Apparently, according to the Progressive Turnout Project, he had made this donation in response to an email they had sent about tuning into the inauguration. But with that said, he also unsubscribed from that group's mailing list in 2002. When Thomas was finally able to vote in 2021, he registered as a Republican and voted only once in the 2022 midterm elections. But more recently, Thomas had begun to make some troubling internet searches. He had searched for images and public appearances of Donald Trump, President Joe Biden, Attorney General Merrick Garland, and FBI Director Christopher A. Wray. He also made internet searches for major depressive disorder. It's also been said that on or around the week of July 8th, Thomas began ordering what's been described as hazardous material online and in person, and visited websites for how to build explosives. Thomas was also a member of a local shooting range and began to go there more frequently, including on July 12th, just one day before the Trump rally. On July 13th, Thomas asked his father if he could borrow his AR-15 style rifle, saying he planned to go to a shooting range. Now, it's been said that he asked to use this rifle in some places, and in other places it's been said that he just took it. So either or at this point, I'm sure that will be clarified in the future. But in the case that he did ask, it was said that his father didn't find it particularly strange, since he had borrowed the weapon many times before for target shooting. Thomas then went to a local gun shop that day, where he bought 50 rounds of ammunition. He also stopped at a Home Depot to buy a 5-foot ladder. Another thing Thomas did that day was research Ethan Crumbley and his family. Now, Ethan Crumbley was 15 years old when he shot and killed 4 of his classmates and injured 7 people, including a teacher, at Oxford High School in Michigan in November of 2021. Crumbley was sentenced to life in prison without parole, while his parents, Jennifer and James Crumbley, were found to have failed to secure the handgun used in the shooting and were sentenced to 15 years in prison with the possibility of parole after 10 years. Later on in the day, Thomas then drove to the Trump rally in Butler, Pennsylvania, and he parked about a third of a mile away at a gas station. Then at around 5:07 p.m., Thomas could be seen pacing and walking towards the rally. He then made his way to a nearby building, climbing up the air conditioner units until he was able to get onto the roof of an adjacent building. From there, he moved onto a taller building next to it. Shortly after, Thomas screenshotted a picture from a live stream of the rally. It's been said that around this time, some rally-goers reported Thomas as a suspicious individual. 2 teams of Secret Service snipers were about to take their positions on 2 buildings located behind the rally stage, and at 5:10 p.m., Thomas was identified as a person of interest. At 5:30 p.m., Thomas was spotted with a rangefinder, and about 5:52, the Secret Service spotted Thomas on the roof of the nearby building outside of their security perimeter. Then at about 6:05 p.m., Trump walked onto the stage and began speaking to the audience.
This is a big crowd. This is a big, beautiful crowd. I wish the fake news back there would show it. I wish they'd spin their cameras and show it, because nobody would believe it. You know, the other day, Biden was saying, I've got big crowds, meaning him, he gets big crowds. He doesn't know what a big... And there were like 93 people there.
At 6:09 p.m., the counter-sniper team, which was positioned further south, was seen turning north toward Thomas. In the next minute, They begin to move into position, kneeling down, grabbing their weapons, and pointing them in the direction of Thomas. It was at the same time that several rallygoers began to realize that Thomas was on the roof and that he had a gun, approximately 400 feet away from Trump.
Look, they're all pointing.
The Atlantic, maybe the Pacific.
Yeah, someone's on top of the roof. Look. There he is right there. Right there, you see him? He's laying down. You see him?
Yeah, he's laying down.
Instead, I'm here with you fighting like hell to get a senator.
What's happening?
And to make sure we take back the White House, because if we do, we're going to make America better than ever before. We're going to make it.
Yeah, look. There he is.
Easy, because we have millions and millions of people in our country that shouldn't be here. Dangerous people. Criminals. We have criminals. We have drug dealers. We have people that should not be here.
Right on the roof.
It's much tougher than it happens.
You went right on the roof, big guy.
That's a little bit old, that chart.
By 6:10 p.m., law enforcement officers appeared to be searching for Thomas. It's been said that a Butler Township police officer actually attempted to stop Thomas, climbing up to the roof to approach him, but Thomas pointed his gun at the officer, prompting that officer to retreat. Then at about 6:11 p.m., 8 minutes into Trump's speech, a shocking scene begins to unfold. In the following footage, I have compiled 3 different perspectives onto one screen that are in real time. One is a bystander near Thomas. 2 is the front broadcasted view of Trump. And 3 is a view of the sniper team as Thomas began shooting. These pieces of footage have been aligned by audio peaks. Now, just a warning that some of this footage may be upsetting to some viewers.
And look what happened to our country. Probably 20 million people. And you know, that's a little bit of he's going
Now, one more time in slow motion. At the same moment Thomas began to fire, Trump moved his head to emphasize a chart that showed statistics on immigration that was being shown on the large screen at the event.
Take a look what happened.
Let's see that again with compiled video from several different perspectives at the rally.
Oh, that's a little bit old, that chart. That chart's a couple of months old, and if you want to really see something that's said, take a look at what happened. Oh.
Let me get my shoes. I got you, sir.
Let me get my shoes, sir.
Hold that in your head. It's bloody.
So we're getting
It is believed that as many as 8 rounds were fired before the Secret Service shot and killed Thomas, 28 seconds after he opened fire.
He's dead. I just seen his hair go up. They shot him in the head. He's dead.
Well, if they hit anybody over there.
Did he pull up a shot?
He number of shots.
I thought that was ours.
No, that was him. The first 2 shots were him.
He's on the roof. He's right there. He's right there on the roof.
I believe the actor was dispatched on much more.
And unfortunately, some of Thomas's bullets did hit several people.
One shot right here, Mike. One shot right here.
I got you. Let me get my shoes.
Go!
David Dutch, a 57-year-old resident of New Kensington, was shot and has suffered broken ribs and damage to his liver. David is still in need of at least one operation. Also, James Koppenhaver, a 74-year-old out of Moon Township, Pennsylvania, who is actually a registered Democrat, was critically injured but is currently in stable condition. But sadly, one of them, Corey Comparator, passed away at the scene. Corey had just celebrated his 50th birthday just a month before. He grew up in Freeport, Pennsylvania, and graduated from Freeport High School, and he married his former classmate, Helen. Together they raised 2 daughters. Corey has been described as sincere, caring, and kind. For nearly 3 decades, Corey worked at a plastics plant in Butler County, rising from maintenance supervisor to project engineer. In his spare time, Corey served in the U.S. Army Reserve and as a volunteer firefighter. His wife Helen said that she wanted people to know that Corey was also a hero, because at that terrible time at the rally, when shots rang out, he covered his family with his own body to protect them. Corey was loved by everyone who knew him, and is not only mourned by those who knew him, but he is also being mourned by millions of people around the world. Corey loved President Trump, and MAGA politics was one of his passions. So he was just so thrilled to attend this rally. But minutes into the rally, his joy was shattered by Thomas. After the Secret Service shot and killed Thomas, it's been said that he had some sort of a detonation device near him. Sources have said that law enforcement then combed through a white van believed to have been used by Thomas, and in it they found explosives, including an improvised explosive device, a bulletproof vest, additional magazines, and a drone. Further investigation has also revealed that there were also 14 firearms, bomb-making materials, and a second cell phone found inside his parents' home where he lived. Now, nearly a week after the assassination attempt on former President Trump, investigators are still scrambling to piece together the puzzle that is Thomas Matthew Crooks. There seem to be more questions than answers. When they were recently asked, the FBI said they did not have an identified motive, although they said investigators are working to attempt to identify what the motive was. It's been said that high priority is being placed on determining motive because the FBI is also looking at the shooting as a potential domestic terrorism act. Obviously, it would be very important to find out motive, not just to ensure that Thomas wasn't, from a larger group of individuals, but it's also important to understand motive to hopefully prevent more of these violent attacks in the future. Many American people are sharing the same sentiment that for something like this to happen, America is in big trouble. Now, understandably, many people are outraged and left questioning, how is it that the Secret Service could let something like this happen?
How does something like this happen where there's all of this law enforcement there, but a former president is nearly killed?
I hate to pass dispersion on the Secret Service because the agents on the scene did the right thing. Although they took forever to get him off the stage, which to me is a breakdown of a way to trade a situation like that. And having a short agent trying to protect a man, his entire torso and upper body is exposed. If that had been a professional hit, they would have had a second and third chance. So I saw lots and lots of failures. In my strict opinion, this was an absolute security failure. Even a security guard understands the basics of protecting a building or a principal or somebody coming on the area. So it's a basic breakdown. If you think of this as a layman and you're there hours before the president arrives and you stand on the stage and you look around the area, a normal layman would say, I should have somebody on that roof and that roof and that roof. And before he comes on stage, the agent in charge should be previewing the area. And even if it's a minor threat or a suspicious person, it's prudent to hold off letting him go on stage. It's normal to constantly sweep and constantly sweep. You check, you recheck, because it's too late once the chute is open, and it's too late if you haven't swept the area thoroughly. Pointing fingers at the state and local police is absolutely wrong. Ultimately, and absolutely, the agent in charge of that scene and the director of Secret Service, the buck has to fall on their desk.
Some are calling for President Biden to fire Secret Service Director Kimberly Cheadle. In fact, at the time I'm recording this, there is set to be a hearing on Monday, July 22nd, where Secret Service Director Kimberly Cheadle will testify before the House Oversight and Accountability Committee. A subpoena is what compelled her appearance before the committee. A statement just released by the Secret Service reads, "We are committed to better understanding what happened before, during, and after the assassination attempt of former President Trump to ensure it never happens again." Now, in the future, hopefully we do hear about how this could have possibly happened. Some people have offered that perhaps Trump was made aware of a potential threat, but he wanted to push forward anyway, as Trump is somewhat known to be kind of always doing his own thing. However, it is ultimately still the responsibility of the Secret Service to protect him. Now, all of that said, it's very likely in this case that we will never really have answers to some of our questions. Now, the fact that there are still so many unknowns at this point has led people to develop their own theories. Some people are questioning whether this entire thing was fabricated by Trump or possibly even planned by Biden's team. Many are claiming that this incident just proves that the Secret Service had a sort of let it happen mentality where they weren't really prioritizing the well-being of Trump. But at the moment I'm filming this, those ideas remain just theories. In more recent years, many Americans agree that the nation's political debates have grown more and more toxic, which could potentially lead to more violence. Some Americans believe that Trump himself is who changed the tone of political debates to be more toxic, while others disagree and believe that political debates were always toxic. Now, for Thomas, many more questions remain about him as well. A lot has been said about him being bullied in school, and Thomas also has a lot in common with a lot of other high-profile shooters. And he has just joined a list of young men, many of whom are no longer alive, to communicate their potential motives, so we are left to speculate. Now, what do many of these men have in common? Well, first of all, 98% of them are male, a growing number of whom are in their late teens to early 20s. And they often have a history of trauma and isolation, often disconnected. They experience self-loathing and suicidal thoughts, and they very often find something or someone to blame for that self-loathing. We also know that many of them are into video games or really anything where they can be involved in aggression immersion. They often feel rejected by women and become consumed with rage over that. These are often described as incels, which comes from the term involuntary celibate. Gavin de Becker, who wrote The Gift of Fear, teaches about threat assessment, and he came up with the acronym JACA, or JACA, to help others evaluate how serious a threat could be. And I think it's pretty applicable here in these situations. He teaches that when these 4 things are aligned, things are in a bad place. So at this point, security must be tighter than usual to eliminate a violent incident. Now, JACA. J is for justification. What is the person's perceived justification for carrying out their threats? The person may feel justified in their actions. A is for alternatives, as in the individual feels they have no other alternative. Consequences, meaning the individual is willing to take the risk. And ability, are they able to carry out the threat? Now, this acronym is just a tool to help people think about the red flags that may be seen before an incident like this. These men also typically have some sort of mental illness or depression. Now, I'm going to tell you what I think about this case so far. First of all, I know it is reported that Thomas had no known mental issues. However, that does not mean that he did not have any. Clearly, something was going on with him. A source did reveal that because Thomas's parents were both therapists, it was claimed that they really didn't believe in medication. Now, if that's true, it's possible that they were trying to help him as much as possible through therapy instead of actual medication. It could also be that Thomas was also just so quiet that his parents didn't even know how he was potentially internalizing the pain he was internalizing. Now, one thing that really bothered me is I saw an interview with Thomas's school counselor, and this counselor went on to say that despite other former classmates saying that Thomas was bullied at school, the counselor said he didn't believe that Thomas was ever bullied.
A former classmate of Thomas apparently told the New York Times that other students would tease him and even call him a, quote, school shooter. Do you recall, was he bullied in high school?
Great question, Jim, and that question has been brought up to me before.
Yeah.
I can adamantly say he was not.
Really?
And I say that really deeply because I've thought of this question. When anytime we get a tip on bullying, the administration at Bethel Park takes great pride in stopping it. As guidance counselors, all 4 of us were out and about amongst the school, and we made sure that if it was going on, we would stop it. But I can honestly tell you, there are no records even that Thomas was bullied. And if he was, I would be notified. Then I would call the parents, and then I would get his teachers involved too. But that did not happen.
Now, personally to me, that just bothered me, and it seemed kind of like a red flag to me. Number one, why would former classmates be describing this kid as a loner who would sit alone at lunch, say he was bullied if he wasn't? I mean, it's possible that maybe some students didn't notice that he was being bullied, or it's also possible that students are fabricating it, but why would they do that? I highly doubt that all of these students would just be suddenly lying to the media for no reason other than to just say he was being bullied when he wasn't. To me, it's just another example of how bullying is swept under the carpet at some schools. Again, is it possible that Thomas never told anyone he was being bullied, or never talked about how much it bothered him? Yes, of course. I mean, just because a kid is quiet, it doesn't mean he doesn't have big feelings behind his silence. That is why I feel it's so bizarre that a counselor of all people would say that bullying isn't happening just because he may not have been aware. As a mental health professional, it would make much more sense to say something like, I wasn't made aware of the bullying, but that doesn't mean it wasn't happening. When it comes to bullying in school, it does happen, and it does affect some kids worse than others. And until society understands and starts talking about this more seriously, we're going to keep failing our kids who need psychological help in that arena. I would also like to point out that Thomas was said to have an issue with hygiene, which is often a sign of depression. Could it be that Thomas just hated taking showers and he wasn't depressed? Sure. But when all these things are put together, the bullying, the being a loner, the hygiene, they begin to paint a much bigger picture. Now, something I've discovered in my research with these shooters, at least the ones who are still alive to describe it, say that they felt suicidal before they committed their crime. While we don't know for sure whether Thomas was to that suicidal point, we do know that he had Googled major depressive disorder. We also know that Thomas told his employer he would be back at work the next day. Now, was that because he really thought he'd be at work the next day, or was it more to put his employer at ease? Some people have theorized that the fact that he had detonation devices near him on the roof may indicate that he was trying to create a threat or distraction to potentially, be able to run away, indicating that maybe he was not suicidal. That said, others believe that Thomas probably knew that he would have been likely killed, and the bomb was just another way to hurt others and possibly destroy evidence. What else do we know about Thomas? We know that his mother is a Democrat and his father is a Libertarian, and at one point, there were allegedly Trump signs in his yard. While he had no real footprint on social media, no posts about his political ideology, he also left a message on the gaming platform Steam in which he said that, quote, July 13th will be my premiere. Watch as it unfolds. And we also know that in April, he searched websites for information on major depressive disorder and depressive crisis treatment. Here's the questions I have that I'm not sure we'll ever have answers to. Why was Thomas so interested in the Crumbley case? I think understanding this could possibly help us further piece together a motive. For instance, could Thomas have been latching onto the Crumbley case as a way to sort of maybe get back at his parents for some sort of reason? Of course, Thomas wasn't a minor, so I'm not sure if that would make sense, but that is the first case in history that parents were convicted in a U.S. mass shooting. Or could it be that he didn't want his parents to have to suffer like that? So maybe he was looking up, all of those reasons why they got convicted. Either way, I think it is very interesting that he was digging deeper, looking into that specific case. Another question I have is, on the day of the rally, his parents attempted to reach out to him to find him, and he didn't respond. So they actually reported him missing. And I don't know if there's pieces missing to that story, because I just heard somewhere else that it wasn't that they reported him missing, it was that when they heard about the shooting, they called the police because they were concerned. So that's my question around that. How did that all happen? Did the parents have some sort of an idea that he was going through some sort of depressive episode? Did they have other clues? Could it be that he was just gone for too long, that he wasn't answering his phone, and the parents just felt like something wasn't right? The final question I have is, if it's true that Thomas was bullied at school and didn't have many friends and he was just internalizing all of this pain, is it possible that he did this to carry out some sort of narcissistic linking fantasy, which is what some of these shooters do when they try to attach themselves to a very famous person? They do this because in their minds, they will forever be linked to that individual, because perhaps he felt that he was an underachiever and he wanted the notoriety of being a smarter or stronger person than the Secret Service and Trump. Perhaps he perceived Trump and all politicians as bullies. I'm also wondering if perhaps Thomas was planning on creating a film of his perspective in all of this. I did find that several sources said that he was a Star Wars fan, which of course many people are, but then I did see this photo of him taken at the movies recently. He also used the word premiere when foreshadowing what he was doing on July 13th. almost as if it were a promo for a movie. And finally, we did just find out that Thomas was using a drone. Was he using it to create a film? If he was, this aligns even more with the fact that he may have been having narcissistic fantasies. Even if he wasn't filming with the drone, his statement to watch his premiere is an indication alone that he had some sort of narcissistic fantasy of others watching him carry this out. But the real question many people are wondering is, who will be held accountable for this incident? While I do believe that there should be accountability that this shooting was able to occur the way it did, I also believe that the shooting is just the symptom of a much larger problem. While so many people are so laser focused on the politics of it all, yes, in recent years I would agree that things have gotten more toxic, but most people don't go out and hurt others. I'm still sitting here trying to figure out why some 20-year-old kid felt he had nothing else to lose and only things to gain by trying to take out a presidential candidate. And my concern is that the origination of this problem will get lost in all the political rhetoric. I mean, yes, personally speaking, I think that gun violence is a problem. And yes, personally, I think there's a lot of political hate between Americans. But at what point are we going to pay better attention to how we handle core issues like bullying in school, mental illness, and psychotic breakdowns? I mean, if you're not looking at the face of this 20-year-old, wondering about how you would feel if these were the eyes of your child, that right there, I think, is one of the biggest problems we have as a society. The idea that no one thinks anything like this can happen to their family. Somehow everyone thinks they are better than this. But I can tell you from personal experience, you're not. You can have a family member that seems to be functioning totally well in society and they are loved by so many, and yet it's possible that one day you're going to wake up and they'll have committed suicide or they'll have committed some kind of other crime that leaves everyone around them bewildered. It can happen to your children. You can be the greatest parent in the world. We need to stop being so naive to think that this type of thing cannot happen in our own lives. How can we get these people the help that they need before it gets to this point? And without knowing more details, I do empathize with Thomas's parents and family, because not only did they lose a child, but they now have to deal with this guilt for the rest of their lives. Many people are actually blaming them as they mourn the loss of their child. I have said a few times on my channel that I know that many people will be put off by how empathetic I am when it comes to criminals or the criminal mind, but the truth is, I had no other choice as a child, because I have personally experienced someone in my immediate family having a psychotic break and going to prison. I have experience with the type of guilt that family members of criminals carry. So it's not a far stretch for me to empathize in situations like this, both with Thomas and his family. Many people have told me I'm probably a little too empathetic, and I can respect that. But for things like this, I think many people in society fail to see how this connects to their own lives. And that, to me, is the real tragedy. That lack of empathy for others and inability to see yourself in the eyes of your neighbor is one of the major problems we have as a society. And it's one of the main reasons these types of horrific tragedies will sadly continue. Now, while I do have empathy for Thomas and other criminals, that's not to say I have more empathy for them than the victims, because of course that is far from the truth. Because the whole reason why I even started this channel was to help be a voice for countless victims that no longer have the ability to tell their stories. But for me, I always ask myself, what can we actually learn from this that we can teach our children to help prevent more of this in the future? While I completely denounce Thomas's actions, I also find his story really sad, because I believe that he likely felt he had no other value in the world but to do something like this, be it for notoriety or showing those bullies back in school how powerful he could be. Now, what do you all think? Will this event be a wake-up call for bullying, mental illness, Secret Service protocol? Are you going to tune in to the explosive hearing on Monday? For those new to my channel, my name is Tara Marie, and this has been an episode of True Crime Matters, where we talk about and analyze everything true crime. If you have gotten any use out of this video, please take a second to like and subscribe so we don't lose each other. It costs nothing, and it would mean so much to me to have your support. As always, thank you so much for watching. Be careful out there.